Welcome to Relentless Pursuit with Marjorie Dudley. Real conversations with entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders who refuse to settle. This isn't about overnight success. It's about the decisions, discipline, setbacks, and standards that shape extraordinary results. If you're building something that matters, you're in the right place.
Hi, welcome to Relentless Pursuit with Marjorie Dudley. I am really excited for my guest today, Phil Nahajewski. He's a partner with Florida CFO Group, and Phil has quickly become one of the dearest people I know. He's got an incredible sense of humor, and he's got really just a lot of incredible experience and stories to tell. Phil, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so glad to have you.
Marjorie, it's an honor, and thank you for pronouncing Nahajewski like you're Polish.
I yes, I had to practice it a few times. I got there. I got there. Phil, how did you come to be a partner with Florida CFO Group? How did this career, how was it born?
Okay, well, it's a long, long journey, but it was all born from a real bad business decision I made as a youngster. It was a rite of
Uh-oh.
passage growing up in Detroit to when you turn 13 to raise your hand for a Detroit newspaper route. And my older friends,
Yes.
they were driving nicer bikes and had nicer baseball mitts because they were making their $10 a week delivering their 40 papers to in the blue collar neighborhood I grew up in Detroit. And I was offered a paper route with 80 customers. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to make twice as much as all my friends. And the way it worked was for my friends, they would deliver their 40 papers during the week, and on Friday collect their $40 and give the Detroit News their $30 on Saturday. Well, I delivered my 80 papers all week long. When it was time for me to collect on Friday, less than half of my customers were even home. My paper route was the trailer park on 8 Mile Road that years later Eminem would use for the scene for his movie 8 Mile. And
Oh,
what I learned, Marjorie, was that on the street where I grew up and my friends were delivering papers, it was a typical blue collar neighborhood where dad went to the factory, mom was home with the kids, and they were to pay the paper boy on Friday afternoons. That was not true in the trailer park. These guys either worked nights or after getting their paycheck, they weren't sitting around their trailers, they were in the local bar. So it was just a different experience. And I had learned entrepreneurship at a really young age at 13. And that started me on an appreciation for business and entrepreneurship, how it's never easy. It's always a challenge. But if you rise to the challenge, you do okay.
I mean, how true is that lesson? So after you graduated from papers, where did that entrepreneurial journey take you next?
Well, I couldn't wait to not be an entrepreneur and be an employee. I actually pumped gas on 8 Mile Road, right across the street from the plant, which was also featured in Eminem's movie, the Dodge plant on 8 Mile Road Mound. Went away to college, Michigan State University. Thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And what I realized is that what I really liked was telling college girls, hey, I'm going to be a lawyer someday. I was
Good
going through
pickup
law
line?
school, and it worked, by the way. I found
Yeah.
the woman of my dreams in a bar in Detroit almost 50 years ago, by the way, and we're still together.
Wow.
And we were starting a family, had our first house. My wife was pregnant with our first. And I was wrestling with how to pay these bills and landed a job at my target company, my target employer, which was Burroughs Corporation. The second largest computer company in the world was based out of Detroit, where almost every business was automotive. And it was the start of a downturn for the industry that lasted for the last 40 years. Anyway, Burroughs Corporation said, we'll pay for your grad degree. I said, great, I'm going to law school. He said, no, you're a finance guy. We'll pay for your MBA. And I said, guess what? I'm going for my MBA now. And that's how I got into the world of becoming a CFO, climbing the corporate ladder at Burroughs and enjoying the final glory days of the computer mainframe business in the 1980s. In the 1990s, I
Wow.
shifted to cable TV and enjoyed the glory days of another industry for 20 years. But the thing about glory days, they eventually end. And from there, it was a severance package where I learned a lesson that it doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank. If you have nothing to do in the day, you're not going to be happy. I didn't have to work financially, but psychically I did. So I went out and started helping nonprofits and tech startups and small businesses using my CFO skills. And before long, I'm a fractional CFO in the Florida CFO Group.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. When you were helping small businesses and startups, what were some things that you were noticing that, whether mistakes that they're making or gaps or oversights, what did you see a lot of?
Well, I saw a lot of anti-corporate mindset amongst the entrepreneurs. They
Fair.
looked at my corporate background and it was like, don't bring that corporate stuff to me. But what I learned was that they needed it, but it's better off that they didn't recognize I was teaching them corporate fiscal discipline as an entrepreneur. Early in my journey as a fractional, I had the two calls almost in the same week from entrepreneurs that both hit milestones in their life. One guy said, Phil, I just turned 60. I'm not at my number. I need some help. And then a week later, an entrepreneur said, Phil, I just turned 50. I'm not at my number. I need some help. I think something about having that first digit of your year change makes you realize you're not quite where you wanted to be. And then gives them the wake up call to think maybe I need to get some help. Well, corporate America for years has been criticized for overly focused on quarterly results. But if the reason you're at your number is because you let quarters pass without progress. And making each quarter feel important is something that small businessmen, I think, are realizing it's not a bad thing about corporate. It's just good discipline to recognize that if you want to achieve a number in 3 years, you better make each quarter count.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. I mean, the that's basically the entire philosophy of 12-week year. I mean, there's some differences, but the idea of how do you move forward in a meaningful way and break it down into manageable chunks, i.e., a quarter or 12 weeks. So it's probably a pretty good philosophy. What about for you personally, going out on your own? What sorts of speed bumps or ahas did you have going from corporate to entrepreneurial land?
Yes, well, actually, I felt like I went from entrepreneurial land to corporate since I started off as a Detroit news paper route. You actually have your own business where you're buying papers, selling papers. So
True.
I always felt more entrepreneurial than my corporate peers. And
Mhm.
I gotta say, I didn't really experience true entrepreneurship pain like the entrepreneurs I've learned to serve and love. And that I was blessed to have the earnings of a corporate CFO for 30 years with a nice severance package, and I didn't feel that I have to find a way to pay the bills. I could go out and just do what I wanted to. So I'm blessed that way. I know how hard it is if you're making that transition without a runway. I see that happen, and I see that even tech founders take that big leap with trying to figure out how I'm going to make ends meet. And they say necessity is the mother of invention. You see a lot of real innovative things come out of the fact that, hey, we have no choice. We got to make this work.
We got to figure it out. We got to find a way. No room for
Yeah.
excuses. Got to solve for this. If you were giving someone some advice, if they were wanting to go out on their own, obviously, in addition to seeing quarterly results and progress, what ways would you guide them to be successful?
Well, find fill the gaps with experienced people that can help you see what you're not seeing. I think too many
Mm.
try to do it by themselves. Think they have to wait they're big enough to hire a full-time CFO. Well, the beauty of the fractional world is we're affordable. You don't pay for 100% of us. You pay for 5%, 10%, whatever you need, whatever fits your budget. So I do think
Mhm.
that fractional talent is a key advice would impart for all business owners to be alert to the fact that you can tap into some very experienced, high quality people by just signing them up as a fractional.
Yeah, 100%. And be around people smarter than you is always a good lesson. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room, at
Right.
least not on everything.
Yeah. Remembering that no one of us alone is as smart as all of us together is something I learned from a mentor. It's very true.
What sorts of things what part of our conversations have been really fun because you've really embraced AI. when someone is thinking about that right now, and obviously a lot of people are scared. There's a whole slew of different mindsets. Some people are not in it at all. Some people are scratching the surface. Some people are pretty deep into it. What are your thoughts on AI? How do you see that it's helping businesses? How do you use it?
Uh, First of all, my advice for business owners is stop making excuses, stop rationalizing about why you aren't pursuing it. There are hallucinations, sure there are data risks, but instead of using that as a reason not to act, no, you learn as much as you can how to avoid those risks and realize that, as my AI coach liked to say, AI today is never as bad as it's going to be. It's getting better every day. The imperfections are becoming less and less. You want to dive into the AI pool head first and start swimming. Again, if you can find some helpers along the way to keep you away from the sharks in the water, yeah, that's great. Find a good coach. That's been a great help for me, and I'm using it,
Mhm.
trying to create a dream future where my dream, Marjorie, is that the business owners I serve can open up their laptop Monday morning and it's as if a 35-year high quality CFO has been crunching their numbers all weekend long and presenting them with deep insights, analysis, a decision factory, if you will. That's what I've learned to call what I'm building. And every morning now I'm
That
being interviewed by Claude to take my 35 years of CFO experience in my brain and dump it into the project that's going to produce this decision factory. So I'm a big believer
So
in
see
it.
if you start using Claude, you'll have Phil's IP in there because he's been feeding it.
Yeah. And, the financial system that I'm building, by the way, I can't take credit for that coin,
Oh.
the term. One of my creative clients called the way I do the financial system.
Have you trademarked it yet? I think
No,
that
no,
needs a
no, I
solid
haven't.
trademark.
Probably does.
I mean,
Hope there aren't any Phils listening to your show and beat me to the punch, but I haven't
all
trademarked it
right,
yet.
Phil's, plug your ears. This is already trademarked. By the time I post this, it'll already be
Yeah.
trademarked.
I'll probably be competing against the Marjorie financial system someday, right? Uh, no, I'm loading into my personal Claude Pro Max system so that I can marry it with the data that I get access to from my clients, and the marriage of the two. It's the fresh insights, the fresh data bounce against my CFO
Yes.
experience that produces the outputs that I think will help entrepreneurs make quick, good decisions. It keeps them making the progress they need to.
Yes. There was a study, man, I wish someone will find it, but there was a study talking about CEO burnout. And in this study, based on some of the analysis they did, they found the CEOs that reduce burnout are actually very skilled at being decisive. So nice Detroit mug, by the way. But they're very skilled at being decisive. They practice and learn the art of quick decision making, not hasty, but in that being decisive, you can always course correct. But when you sit on things, you end up, kind of analysis paralysis and death by that paralysis, a slow, painful death by
Yes,
paralysis.
I couldn't agree more, Marjorie. I'm quite decisive myself, and pride myself in my ability to make good decisions as the best information that's available at the time. You
Yes.
can't ever wait for perfect information because that day's never going to happen.
Never going to come. When you see an entrepreneur, and let's contrast someone, I'm sure you've had that feeling like, oh boy, they're going to have a tough row to hoe versus, man, this person's really going to build something cool. What do you notice? What are some of the observable habits and traits and mindsets between those entrepreneurs that really get lift and those entrepreneurs that maybe struggle and throw in the towel 12, 36 months in?
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind, Marjorie. One is, if you, in the startup world particularly, you see dream chasers and bootstrappers. Always bet on the bootstrapper. The dream chaser
Hmm.
hears the stories of the big multi-million dollar raise from the venture capitalist that is going to just give them all they need to build their dream. And those investments don't come unless they see traction. Occasionally there's that story where someone gets it funded on an idea, but there's usually a backstory that same founder helped enrich someone else in the past with their prior ventures. There's not an easy path where you do a nice pitch deck, wireframe, show up at a VC event, and boom, you get funded and you're off to the races. That dream is becoming rarer and rarer because the imbalance between the people chasing funding and the funders is getting wider and wider. And the terms of venture capital funding are getting more slanted in favor for the VC firms and less against the founders. So I would bet on the bootstrapper.
So bet on the bootstrappers.
Yeah.
Okay. And is the core difference, I mean, dream chasers are those that they go for it based on just a lot of hoping that they'll get lucky, hoping that the big check will come in the mail, hoping that, versus the bootstrappers are really getting in the trenches and making things happen. Is that kind of the big difference as you see it, or is there something else?
Big difference, Marjorie, is focused on customers. The bootstrappers realize that they're not going to get a big investment without good customer traction, and they spend 95% plus of their energies on how to win customers with what they're building, which eventually could lead to investment. The dream chasers think, well, I'm going to get that customer thing figured out after I get funded. I'm going to spend all my energies going to these pitch competitions and VC events and try to get that big check, and then I'll start working on getting the customers to love what I'm building. And the world doesn't
focus on customers first. Focus
Definitely.
On customers first. Focus
Yes.
on customer first. _
Amen.
highlight asterisk. Amen.
You got
That's
it, Marjorie.
excellent. Excellent. What else do you see in terms of mindset? You know, I work with a lot of clients on the mindset of, and we name this Relentless Pursuit because I'm always fascinated by the mindset of folks who just continue to grow and crush their dreams. What do you notice in people's mindset?
Resourcefulness, not being impeded by scarce resources. I spent a good chunk of the last 35 years having a nonprofit in my life where I could be part of the either rescue mission or support system to help sustain their missions for a couple of reasons. One is it's good for the soul, but it's also just so inspirational to see what the nonprofit founders and funders and executive directors, their ability to stretch a dollar is so inspirational. I learned in my early days when I would be conducting budget reviews in corporate America, and I hear people complain that, I can never get to my goals without this big fat budget. I would go to the United Way review meetings and see all these financial statements with scarce resources, with outcome statements that are impressive. And it gives me the power to go back to corporate America and say, you guys are missing out. Why don't you sign up for a nonprofit board and find out about what resourcefulness is all about. So I do think that resourcefulness is the key. The entrepreneurs who learn how to get so much done with so little, they tend to be more successful when the funds come in and they're able to scale the business more effectively because they don't forget what it took to get there.
What it took. I love that. Just being all around resourceful is so powerful. Now, what makes a CFO different? I'm pivoting here a little, but what makes a CFO different than, say, I have my bookkeeper, which is amazing, or I have my controller. So if a business is right in those early stages, why do they want to really have the mind of a CFO supporting them?
Great question, Marjorie. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to explain it to your audience. The main differences are twofold. One is forward-looking and outside-looking. Accountants, bookkeepers, CFO, controllers, vital. I mean, without a solid performance by them, CFOs can't do their jobs as well because we don't have the solid base of financial information that we need. But by and large, their focus is getting the past recorded properly and managing the accounting operations. And very important stuff. The difference is CFOs take that data, work with the entire team, a good CFO probably spends 80 to 90% of their time not overseeing controllers, bookkeepers, but working with the CEO, the business owner, the leadership team, the external stakeholders. They're looking more across the organization, up the organization, outside of finance, and looking ahead. Trying to create the financial future. And that, I think, one very important role for CFOs is to train the entrepreneurs, teach the entrepreneurs that they're in the driver's seat. They create the financial outcomes, but the decisions they make, the discipline they grow into, and they have an opportunity to control their financial destiny more than they think if they know how to properly institute some good fiscal disciplines in their business.
So it's really strategic and I'll say proactive versus reactive and obviously both have a focus on accuracy, but accuracy in trying to make assessments based on what's happened, and what you're working with people to do is how do we actually create the future we want with
how to use the data that
numbers.
comes out of the finance shop in a way that enlightens a terrain to help business owners make better business decisions.
I love that. Tell me about one of the craziest, wildest, biggest turnarounds you've ever seen. Something that maybe you were brought in or asked for advice kind of late in the process, but they were able to pull it off. What did you see? What helped them turn things around?
Well, the one turnaround that I'm particularly proud of happened, I almost stumbled into it. After about 3 weeks of retirement, where I'm painting the pantry shelves and waking up thinking, there's got to be more to life than just hanging around the house.
Honey-do list?
I was exactly, and I hate that, by the way. I'm not good at working around the house, and you always enjoy what you're good at. I'm good at being a CFO. So when I look back at my corporate career, I realized that one of the things I felt best about. And by the way, when you do well on cable TV, the perks are huge bonuses, Super Bowls, MTV Unplugged visits. I mean, it's just an awesome group of perks, a set of perks you get there. But that meant so little to me in hindsight than, say, rescuing a nonprofit that was going to have to shut its doors if not for some good fiscal rescue. And I was able to do that in the early 1990s and with an agency that would serve the developmentally disabled. So I was in Orlando when I got my severance package. I had nothing to do, and I was on the United Way review committee, so I knew what agency was most like the one that I rescued 20 years prior. And I reached out to executive director. I said, hey, if you need some help, let me know. And I didn't really realize how much help they really needed. This was a case where they were almost solely reliant on state funding. They had a maxed out line of credit. And the newly appointed Governor Scott just decided to slash all funding 14%. And now they were figuring out how they're going to survive the next payroll. And that's what I stepped into. Jeez. And so having been through things like when computer mainframes started losing market share to PCs, what happens when the cable business, when the Netflix and Google and Facebook start taking ad revenues. And, I knew how to wrestle with a anticipated downturn in income. And it's about rolling up your sleeves, figuring out how we can skinny down to be able to fit within the likely revenue streams of the future. What kind of new revenue streams can we create? Just applying good business logic to a nonprofit world. This was a $30 million nonprofit that was a cashless start drop in funding that through teamwork, fiscal discipline, we turned it around. We went from 2 days of cash to 3 months of cash and doubled our net assets.
In about what timeline?
In about 18 months, 2 years maybe.
Okay.
It was intense focus that if it is to be, it's up to us. We're going to make this happen. And the team just bonded together and everybody did their part to squeeze costs out of the business and find new ways to bring revenue in. And it was a great team effort.
Their layoff,
yes.
Did they have to make some layoffs? Yeah. Some difficult initial decisions. So talk to me, that's incredible because obviously that was probably difficult initially to be in that position, but then to have to make some difficult decisions to cut team members. How did the leadership communicate with the team members so that they could get that sort of buy-in that, hey, we're going to be a small but mighty team. If we do these things, we can survive and thrive through this thing?
A great question, Marjorie. The key is simplification and communication. You have to present the financials in a way that frontline folks get that. Everybody that works has understands the concept of cash coming in, money going out. It's not rocket science. It's not something that we have to pretend this is too difficult to communicate throughout the organization. So you simplify the financial presentation so it can be more broadly communicated and people get it. And then you ask for help. You have to just let the whole organization know that this is what we're up against. We need to come up with ways to save ourselves from having to let too many people go. But, I learned from my watching the end of the glory days of the computer business when Burroughs bought Sperry. Our mission was to squeeze $1 billion of overhead out of the business. It's just something that you learn that it's never easy. There's a right way of doing it. It's about communication and treating everybody with respect along the way is very important too. That whether or not you're keeping them, asking them to do more, or you're letting them go. Communication and respect are fundamental.
Fundamental. And one of the things I've heard from a few different leaders is sometimes leadership their heart is maybe in the right place of not wanting to scare employees or not wanting people to worry or not wanting people to start looking for other jobs. And so they keep certain cards close to the vest. And that actually that's when gossip can come in, when people don't feel like there's communication and clarity and everybody knows something's going on, but nobody's talking about it. You start getting gossip, you start getting whispers, you start getting even more uncertainty, the uncertainty you were trying to prevent. So it's been a common theme that communication, particularly in challenging times, it's always important, but it's exponentially important when an organization is going through something challenging.
And, challenges are inevitable. Anybody who decides to delay letting people go because of while the competitors are becoming leaner and meaner using AI to replace labor, businesses either need to figure out how to differentiate themselves using AI or shrink using AI. There's no choice to stay the same and not use AI. Your competitors are going to force that change upon you.
There's no choice to stay the same. And AI is obviously a big disruptor in every business right
and
now, in how either you run it.
It facilitates efficiencies in a big way. And I'm blessed to have clients who really understand that and are AI-ifying their business. That's a verb I'm hearing a lot these days. You better AI-ify yourself. So, yeah.
Well, you can trademark that one when you trademark Financials.
Okay.
I'm fascinated with this turnaround of this nonprofit because I think that there are a lot of businesses who have found themselves or maybe find themselves right now in a challenging spot. What then, once they made some difficult decisions and then they communicate with the team, hey, we're going to need to all pull together, rally together, and really, every single one of us is going to need to row our darndest in the same direction. How did they start generating more revenues? How did they get away from being so disproportionately weighted from government funds into what I'm assuming is probably more private funding?
Yes. Well, I had been in the nonprofit space and because I've always had a nonprofit in my life, I've been exposed to some innovative thinking in the nonprofit space to diversify revenue streams, not be overly reliant on your government, on your donors. How do you create a business that can generate income to take care of some of those needs? Mm-hmm. For serving a population with developmental disabilities, I learned that there was a document shredding was actually a business that had worked elsewhere around the country. Mm-hmm. Standing on a shredding belt, trying to pick out the pieces that can't go through that shredding machine would be a job that would probably drive a lot of us crazy. But for those who are not hireable anywhere else, that just would treasure the experience of having a place to go to work and standing alongside your friends and doing the same thing. It was a joy to watch, actually, how that it not only added to the value of life for the people who were otherwise staying at home. It created a business that was able to generate some revenue and income to offload the over reliance on government funding. So there's a lot of creativity and innovation in the nonprofit world in terms to job creation, income creation,
Yeah.
in a way that combines
Well, that's
both.
actually, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, basically,
That's
it's
actually one of the things with nonprofits that I find really interesting is obviously they can go out to potential donors and raise money, but with some creativity, a lot of nonprofits can actually create a business that is a revenue generating center. So the
yes.
Boys and Girls Club back in Oregon, where I came from, they had a bingo center, and it was their, at the time at least, I don't know where it is now, but at the time it was one of their largest fundraising streams. And obviously we all know Goodwill, and this isn't a value judgment on any particular nonprofit, but there's lots of ways to turn that nonprofit into its own revenue stream with some creativity. So I love that concept.
Yep. It's the community that understands what's trying to be accomplished that comes in and frequents those kinds of establishments, becomes part of that goodwill cycle. Biddy and Bo's Coffee, for example, we were in Savannah and had the opportunity to visit one of their shops, staffed mostly by people with developmental disabilities, and it was so heartwarming to see the customers frequent this place because they had that deep appreciation for what was being accomplished here in terms of providing a life for people who were born less advantaged than the rest of us.
Yeah. That's a good lesson. When you've seen an entrepreneur maybe struggle to implement the things they should implement in order to succeed in their business, have you noticed what that's usually related to? Like what gets in some business owners' ways that hold them back?
Good question. It's coming from our partners meeting. We had 35 of us Florida CFO Group partners who compare notes and talk about such things. And when we're together, we'll usually say it's because they don't listen to us enough. I think there's some truth in that.
Yeah.
Where it takes a little bit of humility to listen to experts in fields that are outside your organization that
Yes.
can contribute. And I know if we were to survey the Florida CFO Group partners, which by the way is just a brilliant group of really experienced CFOs, when we complain about things not going our way, you always hear, "Oh, I wish you'd just listen to me." But
Right.
that may be oversimplifying it, but maybe not, because like I said, no one of us is alone as smart as all of us together. It's that humility to
Right.
realize that you don't have all the answers and listen to others that I think could limit the number of business failures.
I love that you said humility because obviously as a coach, that's one of the key traits someone needs to bring to the table in order to be coachable is there has to be some degree of humility that just says I don't know everything, and even what I do know, I have one particular perspective on that. I'm open to hearing and seeing and listening to other perspectives. Do you think, in your opinion, do people who are maybe lacking some of that humility, are they aware they're lacking humility, or is it usually self-awareness that goes along with it, a
Yeah,
lack of awareness?
it might be it. It might be that they've bought into their own past success and think they're infallible. Business failures a lot of times is for people overreaching. They think I can't possibly fail because I'm me, and they'll make that big leap of faith
Yes.
and make investments that are beyond their means and are contingent on successful, ongoing, continued economy and market share growth, which doesn't always
A little bit of
happen.
hubris.
Yeah, they're
A little bit of hubris.
right.
Well,
Exactly.
and I think in order to be successful as a business owner, entrepreneur, there has to be some degree of confidence in yourself to take that leap and to move forward. But it's making sure that confidence doesn't go into hubris and tune out people in your life who are, because it's a small group who's going to give you the tough stuff. right? There's a lot of people that'll blow smoke up your hiney, but it is a very small group that will actually give you the tough stuff and tell you like it is. And so we have to be willing to one, hear it when it's given to us, but I would say I would even go further to seek it out. And that can be challenging because there's maybe some ego at stake. I know I have that. It's like I don't want to hear all the things that I'm doing wrong. I want to hear all the things I'm doing right. So it's
Good point.
balancing seeking out advice from people who will tell me the truth and will give me a perspective that on my own I don't I don't have.
Well said, Marjorie. I buy into that. And from a financial perspective, I think there's three types of entrepreneurs. There's the hesitant who are afraid to make decisions because they're unsure what's going to happen down the road and they don't know how much cash they really have to play with. There's the reckless who also don't know how much cash they have to play with, but they make decisions anyway. Those are the ones with hubris that end up sometimes having to file bankruptcy. And then there's the confident. And the difference between the confident and the other two is the confident has this roll up their sleeves, worked with a good finance professional, laid out that 13-week cash plan, that budget for the year, and they know exactly what they have to work with so they can invest confidently. They don't have to hesitate because they're unsure or be reckless because they don't know. They know, and they know exactly what they have to invest in their business, and that allows them to move forward with confidence.
What can someone do to grow their confidence? Maybe if this is their first time building a business.
At the risk of sounding like a commercial, find someone who can help you build that 13-week cash plan, that 12-month business
Mm.
forecast, so that you can calculate, you can eliminate the hesitancy and recklessness because you see everything in front of you on that spreadsheet that tells you this is what I got to work with. I got to make all my business decisions fit within this cash surplus I'm generating. Otherwise, I'm going to be eating in the bone before long.
That's fantastic advice. Again, seek out wisdom from those who have done it before, those who help others to do it. Find really good mentors, coaches, fractionals, advisors to help you do it right. It is an investment, but it's a lot less costly than having to make those mistakes firsthand, for sure. Phil, you're one of the smartest guys I know in this space, but I also know that iron sharpens iron. So we rarely become the best version of ourselves by ourselves. So who has impacted you? Who has helped you become the best Phil?
Two people come to mind. One's my dad. I have my wife's cross-stitched this thing I have on my office wall to remind me what he liked to say to us kids when we were growing up. And I'm sure he got this from his drill sergeant in the Marines. My dad grew up in the Depression. He had dropped out of school in the 8th grade to go up to northern Michigan, chop wood, send money back to home to his family. Then went to World War II and fought in the Pacific at Iwo Jima. And then worked in factories for his whole life in Detroit. And he would always tell my brother and I when we complained about having to mow the lawn or sweep the basement floor before we went out and played baseball, quit your bellyache. And when I eulogized him about 18 years ago, is when I really started realizing the power of those words. That here's a guy whose trials and tribulations throughout his life were like 1,000 times more than mine, and he had this: no, you don't complain. You other people have more things to complain about than you, and yeah. So that was a big influence on me. Never feel sorry for yourself. Never complain. That was important. The second
Love that.
guy I'm going to cite is the guy who hired me into the cable business 35 years ago. His name is Bill Zer. Just had lunch with him on Saturday. He's 81 years old, and he's the best leader I ever worked for. When I interviewed to be his CFO in Ohio 35 years ago, I answered his questions. And when it's time for me to ask my questions, I asked him, what are your expectations of your CFO? And I'll never forget his answer. He just said, I just expect that we're there to catch each other when we fall. And I thought,
Wow.
that's leadership. Here's a guy who's running a big cable operation and admitting his vulnerabilities in an interview. That's the way he led his team, that we were all going to band together. We're going to watch each other's back so we can move forward confidently. And that's where I learned that it's not just about self-determination. It's leadership combined with self-determination that gets you to higher ground, because by yourself you only go so far. Together we go a lot farther.
Well, that is a phenomenal way to kind of put a bow on this. I love that African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it sounds like he understood that, and you've continued to carry that torch. Thank you so much, Phil. Where can people find both you and the Florida CFO Group? Tell us where we can catch up with you.
LinkedIn is a good place to connect with me. I'm the only Phil Nahajewski on LinkedIn, but it's easier to
I'll
spell.
put the spelling in the notes.
Thank you. I was going to say it's easier to spell Florida CFO Group. If you go to floridacfogroup.com, you can connect with any of our 35 CFO partners and learn about our backgrounds. We like to say for every CFO, for every business owner is a CFO, just like for every Jack there's a Jill. And our website helps you pick the right one for your business.
And if you don't have somebody advising you in that forward-looking, how to prevent the financial mistakes in your business, again, Phil is the smartest guy I've had the honor and privilege of getting to know. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your relentless pearls of wisdom, Phil. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Marjorie. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you for listening to Relentless Pursuit with Marjorie Dudley. If you want to build discipline, resilience, and results in your own work, that's what I help leaders and entrepreneurs do through coaching, speaking, and training. If today's conversation got you thinking about how you'd like to show up, you can find me through the links in the show notes. Until next time, stay relentless.